Hey there. Tonight we're descending far, far below the surface, to a place that's been frozen for so long, even the silence has forgotten what sound is. Under your feet, miles of solid ice. Quiet, compressed, and ancient. It stretches across the vast expanse of Greenland, where even the sky feels like it holds its breath. But somewhere down there, beneath the thick, shifting sheet of glacial armor, something stirs. A whisper beneath the ice. You're lying in your bed now, but I want you to imagine standing on that endless white. No cities, no lights, just wind and cold. Beneath the snow, a massive glacier creaks slowly forward, grinding against stone like a time machine made of frozen water. And yet, hidden miles beneath, radar scans have found something odd. Something angular. Something too geometric to be just rock. Let me be clear, this isn't science fiction. In 2018, scientists using NASA's Operation Icebridge detected strange reflections under Greenland's Hiawatha Glacier. Beneath more than a kilometer of ice, they found what looks like the signature of an impact crater, more than 31 kilometers wide. The structure hinted at a cataclysm from the deep past, but what if it wasn't just a crater? What if something else was buried there? I know. You're cozy under your blanket, and now I'm tossing you into an ancient conspiracy frozen in a planetary deep freeze. But trust me, it's worth it. Because before it was white and silent, Greenland was green and noisy. Think rivers, forests, animals breathing, leaves rustling under a sun that hung just slightly different in the sky. The ice came later. And when it did, it didn't just crush what was there. It preserved it. Like an enormous, planetary freezer. You've probably heard of permafrost, ground that stays frozen year-round. In Siberia, it's coughed up frozen woolly mammoths with intact stomach contents. But Greenland's ice sheet is different. It's deeper, older, heavier. If anything had existed there, anything fragile or magnificent, it might still be down there, flattened but untouched. Unbothered by wars, empires, or the internet. Now imagine, a city. Not a modern one, but something ancient and stone-built. Maybe not city in the New York sense. But structures. Arranged. Planned. Built by hands. Maybe not even human hands, though we'll save that rabbit hole for later. The idea isn't totally absurd. In Antarctica, scientists have already discovered ancient forests fossilized beneath ice. One tree, over 260 million years old, was found perfectly preserved. And in Greenland, sediment cores pulled up from beneath the ice have shown signs of ancient soil, plant roots, and even DNA, proof that something lush once lived there. It's not just science doing the whispering. Indigenous myths from Inuit cultures speak of lands under the ice, of worlds swallowed by the cold. Not always in the metaphorical sense, either. Some tell of places where people lived before the sky froze. Stories carried for generations, even when the landscape was already buried. There's something poetic about that, isn't there? That a city, real or imagined, might be sleeping under the snow, waiting. And tonight, as you drift closer to sleep, I'll be your guide there. Through time, through ice, and through memory. But for now, hush. The wind above is howling across the glacier, but beneath is silence. Absolute, crushing, sacred silence. We're only just stepping into it. The thing about ice is, it remembers. Not in a romantic way. Not like your favorite childhood toy or a photograph curling at the edges. Ice remembers like a recorder with no off switch. Every snowfall stacks a new page onto the frozen library. Every gust of wind, every dust storm from far-off deserts, even distant volcanic eruptions, all of them leave their fingerprint on the ice. And under Greenland's crust of white, those layers go back nearly 2 million years. Imagine it, you're standing with a drill team, the kind who spend months camped out in tents, surrounded by nothing but frost and silence. They extract a long cylinder of compacted snow from the ground, an ice core. Each layer is thinner than a fingernail, but it tells you what the sky looked like, what the air tasted like, and how warm, or not, our planet used to be. In 2021, a team retrieved an ice core from over a mile down. Inside, they found ancient ash particles from far-off volcanic eruptions, pollen grains from long-dead flowers, and microscopic bubbles of air that still hold the breath of an Earth that humans had never seen. Now here's the weird part. Buried within some of these ice cores, scientists have discovered signs of tropical life. Not just pollen or soil, but DNA fragments from plants and possibly even insects. This isn't just climate memory. This is ecosystem memory. Which makes you wonder, what else might be down there, frozen in place? Could there be entire forests, flattened but preserved like pressed flowers in a book? Or even structures, walls, columns, maybe a carved stone face, long eroded by time but somehow still whispering its origin? Let's be clear, no one has found a literal buried city, yet. But there's a growing consensus in glaciology that what lies beneath the Greenland ice sheet isn't just old dirt. It's a record of civilizations long gone, or never even known. And here's where the mystery deepens. The Hiawatha crater, the one detected via radar beneath Greenland's ice, has an unusual shape, perfectly circular, like the fingerprint of a cosmic hammer. Some scientists believe it's the result of a meteorite impact just 12,000 years ago, a blink in geological time. And if that's true, then whatever was living on Greenland's surface at that time would have been instantly annihilated, and then sealed beneath tons of falling snow. There's a theory, fringe, yes, but intriguing, that this impact coincides with the Younger Dryas, a sudden global cooling event that may have pushed ancient human civilizations to the brink of collapse. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the oldest known temple site, was built just after this period. Coincidence? Maybe. But if there were advanced cultures before the ice came, ones that didn't leave skyscrapers or Wi-Fi routers but knew how to shape stone and chart the stars, then Greenland might be their final resting place. A frozen vault for forgotten brilliance. As you lie here tonight, think of that. Below your warm blankets, there's a world entombed in ice. Maybe it's a forest. Maybe it's a meteorite crater. Or maybe it's something we haven't yet imagined, something carved, organized, whispering in a language of geometry and symmetry. The ice doesn't speak quickly. But it doesn't lie either. And one day, as the climate changes, it might melt just enough to tell us everything. There's something eerie about radar. Not because it's inherently spooky, but because it sees what we can't. When you point ground-penetrating radar at Greenland's vast ice sheet, you're not looking at surface snow. You're peering miles beneath it, slicing through compacted frost like a slow-motion X-ray. And lately, what it's been showing us is puzzling. In 2018, scientists from NASA and European space agencies released radar data that mapped out the topography beneath Greenland's ice. And to their surprise, they found sharp ridges, deep valleys, and strange depressions that didn't look like natural land erosion. Some even described it as unusually flat, as if something man-made had once stood there, only to be buried by tens of thousands of years of snow. We're not saying Atlantis is under Greenland. But also, we're not saying that. Because among the flattened plateaus and canyons, researchers found regions of unusual reflectivity, places where radar bounced back strangely, as though hitting materials denser than ice or rock. Could it be large slabs of stone? Walls? Metallic traces? The data isn't clear, and no one's drilled that deep yet. But the anomalies remain. This isn't just speculative fiction, it's being examined by real geophysicists, climatologists, and planetary scientists. They debate endlessly over what these radar maps show. Some believe they indicate ancient river systems that once flowed through Greenland when it was green and forested. Others argue they could be signs of tectonic shifts, scratches from Earth's own slow, grinding plates. But a small, quiet faction wonders, what if Greenland wasn't always uninhabitable? What if it wasn't just green with trees, but also with people? Let's remember something important. Humans are older than most of the cities we've ever built. For 95% of our species' existence, we were nomads, leaving little behind. If a culture had settled Greenland tens of thousands of years ago, it wouldn't have left skyscrapers or satellites. It might have left stone structures, fire pits, post holes, things that, under most climates, decay. But under ice? Things preserve. We've found perfectly intact mammoths in the Siberian permafrost, still shaggy, still carrying stomach contents from their last meal. We've uncovered frozen remains of Iron Age hunters in alpine glaciers, so well kept their tattoos were visible. So if a small, intelligent society once walked Greenland's grassy hills before the last ice age swallowed them, maybe they're still there. Not alive, but visible. Hidden like a secret behind a locked door of crystal. There's even talk, again, fringe, but fascinating, that these anomalies line up with geomagnetic coordinates favored by ancient monument builders. Could Greenland have once been part of a forgotten network? A kind of Stone Age GPS? These are theories most scientists would dismiss, but they're still being whispered on forums, quietly investigated in outlier papers, and maybe, just maybe, being taken seriously by someone with a shovel. And here's a bedtime thought for you. One day, someone will dig. One team will go deeper than anyone before, down past the ice and into whatever waits beneath. Maybe it'll just be rocks. Or maybe, they'll find an old carving. A pattern. A surface polished by hands no longer remembered. Until then, the maps remain silent, the ice remains sealed, and the radar keeps showing us glimpses of a puzzle we haven't quite solved. Sleep tight with that mystery humming just beneath your feet. The city, if we can even call it that, sleeps under pressure. Millions of tons of ice sit heavy on top of what might once have been rivers, hills, or rooftops. The weight compresses everything. And in a strange twist of nature, that pressure can also preserve. Ice isn't just cold, it's a kind of memory, frozen in layers, like pages in a book written in snow. When scientists drill ice cores in Greenland, they're not just collecting frozen water. They're time travelers pulling up ancient air, ancient pollen, and even ancient volcanic ash. Each layer of compacted ice tells the story of a year, just like tree rings, but colder and far more dramatic. In some cores, they've found evidence of abrupt climate shifts. Massive temperature changes that occurred over mere decades. One theory suggests that such shifts might have happened quickly enough to bury civilizations, or at least wipe them off the map before they had time to adapt. We're not talking about dinosaurs here. We're talking about human cultures, forgotten in the frost. And it's not as unlikely as it sounds. Around 12,800 years ago, a mysterious cooling event called the Younger Dryas plunged the Earth back into icy conditions just as it was warming up. The cause? Some scientists argue for a massive meltwater pulse that disrupted ocean currents. Others believe in a comet impact that left behind nanodiamonds and wildfires soot across several continents. Either way, imagine living in a thriving valley, maybe along a river, maybe in what we now call Greenland, when suddenly, everything changes. The animals migrate, the crops fail, the snows arrive too early and stay too long. Within a generation, it's all ice. And if your entire civilization had relied on the land being warm and green, Well, now it's just quiet. Somewhere beneath the surface, frozen in position, the remnants of that world might still wait. Not like in a movie, with buildings intact and people mid-step, but in fragments. A tool. A burned hearth. A post hole carved into the earth. We've found these kinds of things under volcanic ash in Pompeii, under sand in Mesopotamia, and in peat bogs across Europe. Why not under ice? Fringe researchers suggest we reframe our understanding of what counts as civilization. Just because something didn't leave behind steel tools or concrete doesn't mean it wasn't organized, intelligent, or meaningful. An ancient culture using stone, bone, and wood would vanish almost completely unless it was entombed in something cold, dry, and patient. That's the thing about Greenland. It's not just frozen. It's still freezing. The ice moves. It grinds. It shifts. Slowly, but powerfully. Like a massive glacier-powered paper shredder. And yet, deep beneath the current, past the flowing layers of ancient snow, the bedrock still holds its secrets. Here's a weird but true fact. Deep radar scans have revealed what look like buried lakes under the ice. Some are liquid water, kept from freezing by geothermal warmth. Others are just depressions, once lakes that might have cradled early human settlements. In one area, dubbed Camp Century, scientists even discovered traces of plants and insects beneath the ice sheet. That suggests the region was once lush, teeming with life, and possibly inhabited. It's not just the cold that hides history. It's our assumptions. We think of history as neat: Egypt, Greece, Rome, but the earth doesn't work in neat lines. Civilizations might rise, fall, and be forgotten without a single line in the textbooks. And ice? Ice is the ultimate eraser, but also the ultimate preserver. So, if we ever reach that hidden layer, if a drill bit goes deep enough, or if warming thaws the ground just enough to reveal the past, we might get more than a glimpse of forgotten architecture. We might touch something truly strange, a story so old it has no name. A culture that lived, breathed, dreamed, and vanished without saying goodbye. And maybe, just maybe, they left something behind. Something not meant to be found. Not until now. Sleep easy. The past is closer than you think. You would think that an ancient city frozen beneath kilometers of ice would remain hidden forever. But the thing about ice is, it moves. Slowly, yes. Almost imperceptibly across a human lifespan. But over centuries and millennia, glaciers grind their way across stone like colossal, creeping rivers. And sometimes, they reveal secrets. In the early 2000s, satellite data began to show something odd deep beneath Greenland's ice sheet, an anomaly. A flat basin, stretching wider than the city of Paris, buried under 2 kilometers of ice. Not a natural crater. Not a glacier-made valley. It looked too symmetrical. Too intentional. And so began a quiet scientific whisper: could something be buried down there? Fast forward to today, and the instruments are sharper, the sensors more sensitive. Glaciologists now speak of subglacial anomalies, flattened surfaces, sharp corners, clusters of radar-reflective material that just don't belong in the middle of nowhere beneath a giant ice cap. They're cautious, of course. These are scientists. They talk about geological features and possible past lake beds. But others, archaeologists, fringe researchers, and the always online community of armchair explorers, have more imaginative theories. Could an ancient city, or even fragments of one, really survive down there? Let's run the math. Ice can preserve organic material for thousands of years. That's how we've recovered mammoths, leaves, even human bodies like Otzi the Iceman. If a city, perhaps wooden, perhaps partially stone, was rapidly buried in a sudden freeze event. Parts of it might still exist, crushed but not erased. And if that city had metal tools, or carvings etched in stone, those would survive too, albeit frozen in time. A mainstream academic argument revolves around glacial isostatic adjustment, the idea that when glaciers melt, the land beneath them slowly rises back up, like a sponge uncompressing. As Greenland's ice thins from climate change, ancient shorelines, riverbeds, and valleys are coming into view. And if humans lived in those places during a past warm period, we're inching closer to their footprints. But here's a weird twist. In 2018, NASA scientists identified a crater beneath Greenland's Hiawatha Glacier, 31 kilometers wide, circular, and buried just beneath the ice. It might be the site of an asteroid impact. Or maybe, it was something else entirely. You can practically hear the conspiracy forums lighting up. Whether that crater is linked to climate shifts or not, one thing is clear: Greenland has stories to tell, but the ice keeps them quiet. And the silence isn't just physical. It's political too. The logistics of drilling into the ice are difficult enough. But when those drills begin to suggest something beyond geology, something human, something historical, the academic world gets nervous. Funding dries up. Teams are disbanded. Questions go unanswered. Why? Because if we confirm that a sophisticated society once lived in now icy Greenland, it reshapes our whole picture of early human civilization. It would mean redating migrations. Rethinking what people could do, and where they could live. And that threatens more than textbooks, it threatens entire disciplines. Still, exploration continues. Quietly. Persistently. Like the ice itself. Radar pulses keep mapping the ground. Scientists speak in code, low reflectivity, dense layering, non-geological signatures. But to the dreamers, that just means one thing: evidence. Proof of a chapter in history no one ever wrote down. Imagine you're standing on that ice, above the anomaly. Nothing but white in every direction. And yet, a kilometer below, there might be stairs. Or a broken carving. Or bones, arranged deliberately. Not just a grave, a ritual. A language etched into stone, long lost. The thought is both chilling and comforting. Chilling, because it reminds us how much can be buried, literally and metaphorically. Comforting, because even in silence, the past finds ways to speak. All we have to do is listen. You're still standing on the surface of that glacier. The air is crisp, thin, and incredibly quiet, so quiet you might start to hear the faint hiss of your own thoughts. Beneath your feet, 2 kilometers of compressed ice pressed down with the weight of ancient winters. But deep below, where sunlight hasn't touched in over 100,000 years, the story gets even stranger. There's a question that starts to form in your mind, whispering like wind through frostbitten trees. If a city is buried here, when was it alive? That's when we drift into the territory of the last interglacial period, about 120,000 years ago. Back then, Earth was in a warm phase. Greenland may not have been green exactly, but it wasn't the frozen sheet we know today. There were forests, rivers, even large mammals wandering through lowlands where now only ice exists. It's entirely possible that humans, or some cousin species, explored these parts. Maybe not cities in the way we think of them today, with plumbing and pizza delivery, but settlements. Groups of people. Campsites that lasted for generations. A mainstream archaeological debate centers on the Sakak culture, an ancient people who lived in Greenland about 4,000 years ago. DNA evidence from a preserved hair tuft tells us they were genetically distinct from later Inuit populations. That's science at its most intimate, a single hair bridging us back to a person, a life, a story long buried. But here's where it gets weird. Some theorists point to older legends, tales of sunken lands and vanished civilizations. Stories like Hyperborea, a mythical land said to exist far to the north, where people lived in perpetual sunlight and never aged. Fringe? Absolutely. But even the most skeptical scholars have to admit, myth often holds a grain of truth, warped by time. The idea that Greenland, or Antarctica, for that matter, could hide remnants of long-forgotten cultures isn't entirely sci-fi. It's geological. Continental drift, axis wobble, and ice expansion all create the perfect conditions to conceal evidence for tens of thousands of years. One little-known fact? Beneath Antarctica's ice lie over 400 subglacial lakes, sealed off from the atmosphere for millions of years. Some researchers believe life, unique microbial ecosystems, thrives in these frozen, alien environments. Now imagine what else could be down there. Not just microbes, but memories. Greenland's terrain beneath the ice isn't flat. Radar scans reveal ridges, valleys, and what could be the remnants of river systems. These ancient riverbeds look almost too neat. Some meander. Some branch. But others? Others run straight, as if carved with intention. Natural? Maybe. Or maybe not. And here's a scientific twist that sounds more like science fiction. Researchers have proposed the existence of fossilized landscapes, ancient topographies that haven't changed in millions of years because they've been preserved, untouched, by the shifting and grinding of glaciers above them. That means entire landscapes, perhaps once teeming with life, have been locked in a time capsule beneath our feet. We tend to think of history as something we dig up, artifacts, ruins, bones. But sometimes, history is hidden by nature itself, blanketed in silence. The ice becomes both the guardian and the vault. And if one of those vaults cracked open tomorrow, you'd want to be the first one there. Peeking into a place no one has seen since before civilization began. It wouldn't be loud. There wouldn't be trumpets. Just the hiss of cold air escaping, and maybe the glint of something human in the frost. Maybe a tool. Maybe a carving. Maybe a doorway. The further we journey into the heart of the ice, the stranger the silence becomes. It's no longer just quiet, it's oppressive, like a presence. You start to feel the immense weight of time pressing down, not just physically, but emotionally. The ice isn't just frozen water, it's frozen memory. Under your feet lie layers upon layers of snow turned to firn, turned to glacial ice, each layer recording the breath of the earth from tens of thousands of years ago. Trapped within are bubbles of ancient air, tiny time capsules, preserving atmospheric compositions from eras long past. When scientists drill cores into these depths, they don't just study the ice, they listen to the sighs of long-dead forests, the exhalations of prehistoric mammals, even the smoke of forgotten fires. That's a mainstream fact, by the way. Ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica have helped scientists reconstruct over 800,000 years of Earth's climate history. That's almost 1 million birthdays worth of information sealed in silence. But if that ice can hold air, what else might it hold? Let's get speculative. In 2018, radar scans revealed a peculiar shape under Greenland's ice, a massive crater, nearly 31 kilometers wide. Some believed it was created by a meteorite. Others whispered, could it be something else? A buried structure? A remnant of a forgotten catastrophe? Now we're treading into fringe territory, where science and speculation share a campfire. There are theories, unsupported but persistent, that entire cities lie buried under polar ice. Some point to Nazi expeditions to Antarctica during World War II, alleging secret bases or ancient finds. Most historians roll their eyes at such tales. Still, the rumors linger. But let's anchor ourselves again in scientific awe. In 2013, a team discovered microbes alive and well in Lake Whillans, buried beneath 800 meters of Antarctic ice. These organisms had survived without sunlight, oxygen, or warmth for thousands of years. Life in the loneliest cold. So here's a question for your thoughts to curl around tonight. If microscopic life can thrive under so much pressure, so much darkness, could something more complex have done the same, long ago? Could ice have hidden not just life, but legacy? A civilization doesn't have to be global to be meaningful. It just has to leave behind a mystery. One carving. One buried tool. One perfectly aligned corridor. There are places in Greenland where the ice behaves oddly. It flows faster. It cracks at strange angles. Beneath those regions, radar sometimes picks up shadows, non-geological shapes that echo ruins, but remain unconfirmed. You can't help but wonder if the Earth is keeping secrets not because it wants to, but because it must. Because maybe we're not ready to remember. You crouch down in your mind's eye, brushing frost from a buried stone. It's shaped. It's deliberate. It's not supposed to be here. And suddenly, the silence isn't empty. It's waiting. The temperature drops further, as if the atmosphere itself is tightening around you. But it's not just the cold, it's the realization that the ice is not simply covering something. It's preserving it. Like a museum that never opens its doors. You move deeper, not physically anymore, but imaginatively, into the possibility of a world that thrived before written history, now held in permanent frost. We tend to think of civilization as linear, forward-moving. But what if it's cyclical? What if, between the stone tools and the smartphone, there was a chapter, lost not to fire or war, but to ice? There are legends from nearly every ancient culture about cataclysmic floods and world-changing freezes. The Sumerians, the Norse, the Hindus, even the Aboriginal Australians, all tell of a great cold or deluge that wiped away an earlier age. Most scholars chalk these up to symbolic storytelling. But a few argue that collective memory sometimes stretches further than we think. Mainstream science offers a compelling event, the Younger Dryas. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth experienced a sudden return to glacial conditions. It was abrupt, violent, and unexplained. Theories range from a comet impact to massive freshwater disruption. What's interesting is that this lines up eerily with the time some claim a prehistoric culture might have collapsed, something advanced, not technologically like us, but advanced in a different, unknown way. And here's your fringe fact for the evening. Some researchers claim to have identified geometric anomalies under the ice of West Antarctica. Perfectly straight lines. Grid patterns. The kind of things that nature doesn't do, but architects do, especially those who build cities. But it always comes down to evidence. We haven't found a temple, a tablet, a skeleton in gold. Only whispers and shapes and radar images that vanish upon second glance. Ice is the perfect hiding place. It doesn't just cover, it distorts. What's straight becomes warped. What's deep looks shallow. So maybe it's no coincidence that the coldest, most remote regions of our planet are also the least explored. You can't just walk into Antarctica. It's a fortress of storms, crevasses, and logistical nightmares. If something were buried beneath all that, would we even know? You close your eyes and picture it, a domed hall of crystal, ancient walls etched with symbols, completely intact beneath centuries of snow. Not fantasy. Just a future discovery waiting for someone with the right tools, and the right questions. And suddenly, the quiet doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels anticipatory. Like breath held in a great lung. Like something sleeping beneath the ice, and dreaming. Now that the idea is in your head, it won't quite leave you alone. Something is sleeping beneath the ice. Not a monster, not some mythical beast, but knowledge, unread stories sealed in glacial time. Maybe not even human, at least not in the way we define ourselves today. You picture the scientists who spend their lives in the cold, drilling ice cores 1,000 meters deep. These transparent cylinders are more than frozen water, they're time machines. Each layer traps air from millennia ago, tiny bubbles from ancient atmospheres. We've learned about volcanoes, climate shifts, even the Industrial Revolution, all by reading these silent scrolls. But even the most respected glaciologists admit, we've barely scratched the surface. Only about 1% of Antarctica has been explored beneath the ice sheet. Let that sink in. 1%. If the Earth was a book, we're reading the first page, maybe the cover. The rest? Unopened. And as they drill, researchers have found oddities. Bacteria that should be long dead, still alive in pockets of meltwater. Magnetic anomalies deep below the surface. Even temperature readings that don't quite match expectations, as if something beneath the ice is generating heat. Here's your mainstream fact. Lake Vostok, buried beneath over 2 miles of solid ice, is one of the world's largest subglacial lakes. It hasn't seen sunlight in 15 million years. But it's warm. Not lukewarm, just warm enough to stay liquid. And that raises questions. Geothermal heat? Friction from the ice? Or something more complex? Now for your fringe theory. In the 1960s, a military satellite reportedly picked up symmetrical heat signatures from beneath the Antarctic ice, patterns too structured to be geological. The report was shelved. The satellite malfunctioned. But if true, that would mean something warm and engineered lies miles below the surface. A relic city, perhaps. Or a machine left behind by someone. Of course, most scientists scoff at the idea. There's no concrete proof. But there are patterns, radar images released and then redacted. Expeditions that begin with press releases and end in classified silence. Even international treaties that limit access to certain zones in Antarctica. Isn't that strange? A continent with no indigenous population, and yet off limits in critical areas. Why? Sometimes, it's not about hiding what we know, but hiding what we suspect. Because suspicion is contagious. It spreads through late-night documentaries, message boards, and bedtime stories whispered by glowing screens. And here we are, half asleep, half awake, following the trail into the deep freeze. Each fact, each anomaly, like stepping stones across a frozen river. We don't know what's on the other side. But something is there. Waiting. You picture your breath clouding in the cold air, and far below your feet, something ancient shifts slightly in its icy cradle. Still dreaming. Still waiting. The deeper we go, the harder it gets to breathe, figuratively, and in some cases, quite literally. Below all that ice, where the sun hasn't touched in millions of years, something fascinating happens. Life still exists. And not just life clinging to the edges of survival, some of it seems perfectly comfortable. Imagine being sealed in an underground lake where the pressure could crush a submarine, the temperature hovers just above freezing, and there's no sunlight. No photosynthesis. No fresh air. Yet somehow, ancient microbes thrive. They live off chemical reactions between rock and water, no sun required. It's called chemosynthesis, and it flips everything we thought we knew about life upside down. And here's where your brain starts doing that thing, connecting dots that probably shouldn't be connected but kind of make sense anyway. Because if life can survive in a lightless, high-pressure, frozen environment here on Earth, What does that mean for Europa, the icy moon of Jupiter? Or Enceladus, Saturn's little mystery orb, ejecting plumes of water vapor from cracks in its crust? These places aren't hypotheticals anymore. NASA's literally planning missions there. Scientists are running models. Instruments are being built. And yet, under our very own planet, right beneath our feet, we're still discovering new ecosystems in the shadows. Here's a fun mainstream fact. In 2018, researchers announced the discovery of an entire biosphere below Earth's surface, extending for miles into the crust. This deep life includes bacteria, fungi, and other organisms estimated to weigh more than all of Earth's human population combined. They're ancient. They're quiet. And they're pretty much invisible unless you know exactly where to look. Now for the weird. Some of these microorganisms seem to hibernate for tens of thousands of years. Not in the cute way a bear does. These organisms slow their metabolic processes down to a near stop, basically entering biological stasis. They're just waiting. Some believe they could remain dormant for millions of years. They don't age. They don't die. They just pause. Which leads to a fascinating question. What's the difference between something that's asleep for a million years and something that's dead? Some speculative thinkers have even proposed the idea that Earth's deep biosphere could serve as a kind of planetary memory. That microorganisms embedded in ancient ice and stone could record environmental conditions like biological black boxes, holding data from long before humans walked upright. Not just fossils, but living records. And if that's true, if we're only just starting to read that hidden library, what if it contains warnings? That's where it gets murky. Because buried in some of those ancient layers are indicators of mass extinction events, sharp shifts in carbon, methane, sulfur. Chemical scars from disasters we barely understand. Some of them resemble the changes we're seeing now in the modern atmosphere. It's like opening a diary written in blood, and realizing the handwriting looks familiar. So maybe those microbes beneath the ice aren't just survivors. Maybe they're prophets. Sentinels. Holding on to stories we've forgotten. Or stories we haven't written yet. And here you are, wrapped in blankets, imagining a microscopic world far beneath Antarctica. Quiet. Still. But aware. Not in a conscious, sci-fi movie way. But aware in the way that deep forests are aware. In the way that oceans seem to remember shipwrecks. The deeper you go, the more you realize that the ice isn't just a covering. It's a threshold. You wonder, if you pressed your hand against that ancient wall of ice, would it remember you, too? So here's the quiet twist in this frozen mystery. It's not just what's under the ice that's intriguing, it's how long it's been there. Imagine ice as a kind of memory foam for the planet. Every snowfall is a page. Every frost layer a sentence. And over tens of thousands of years, that buildup becomes a frozen library of Earth's climate history. Scientists drill down into glaciers and ice sheets, pulling out long, clear cylinders called ice cores, and when they examine those cores, they're essentially reading the planet's diary. Tiny air bubbles trapped inside the ice are actually pockets of ancient atmosphere. Seriously. Breathe in for a second. Now imagine that air being locked in ice for 800,000 years, until some gloved scientist in Antarctica popped it open last Tuesday. It's surreal, isn't it? These ancient gases tell stories of volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, even industrial revolutions. The composition changes slightly every few layers. Carbon dioxide levels rise and fall, dust appears or vanishes, indicating wildfires, droughts, plagues, even shifts in ocean currents. Each tiny air bubble is a message from the past. Mainstream fact: The Epoca ice core from Antarctica stretches back 800,000 years and has helped scientists model everything from prehistoric climate cycles to modern-day climate change. It's how we know that the Earth goes through regular cycles of warming and cooling, usually driven by tiny wobbles in our orbit. But also, how fast things have accelerated in the past century. Fringe thought? Some researchers have proposed that these frozen records might one day help us reverse engineer a stable climate model, not just for forecasting, but for actually intervening. Using the data like a time travel manual, we could, in theory, tune the atmosphere. That's still sci-fi, but we've already begun dabbling in geoengineering, cloud seeding, and carbon capture. The ice just might be the instruction manual. Now for the strange. In some cores, researchers have found unexpected anomalies, chemical signatures that don't quite match known events. One layer contains unusually high levels of ammonium, consistent with the hypothesis that a comet may have exploded in the atmosphere over North America about 12,800 years ago. No crater, no bones, just a trace in the ice. Like a secret note left in the margins. It makes you wonder how many events, catastrophes, transformations, extinctions, have come and gone, erased from history books but still quietly preserved inside the frozen breath of Earth. And here you are again, eyes fluttering closed, thinking of glaciers as giant cassette tapes. Press play. Press rewind. And maybe, press pause. There's something oddly poetic about it, too. The fact that something as ephemeral as weather could be etched in time forever, while most of our lives pass by unrecorded. You brushing your teeth this morning won't be trapped in ice. But a volcanic sneeze from 63,000 years ago? That one's still echoing. Ice has patience. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It just remembers. And that brings up the uncomfortable part. Melting. As the ice sheets retreat, and they are, rapidly, they're not just raising sea levels. They're releasing those ancient bubbles, letting prehistoric air mingle with the present. Ghosts of climates past are entering the lungs of today. In a way, you could say the past is exhaling. Slowly. Reluctantly. And no one's sure if we're listening closely enough. So maybe tonight, you'll dream of floating through a corridor of glacial glass, each pane holding a scene from a different chapter of Earth's story. Some are calm. Some are terrifying. But all of them are yours now, just as much as they were the mammoths. And maybe, in that dream, the ice will speak, not with words, but with a whisper of wind, and the crisp, clean scent of snow that remembers everything. And as you keep drifting deeper into this frozen labyrinth of thought, let's step away from the glaciers and focus on what lies beneath, not the cities or the air, but the time itself. You're probably lying there thinking, okay, so the ice remembers. But for how long can something actually last, completely frozen, untouched by time? Let me tell you about Lake Vostok. Beneath nearly 4 kilometers of solid ice in Antarctica lies a vast, hidden body of water, one of the world's largest subglacial lakes. Completely sealed off from the atmosphere for possibly 15 million years, Lake Vostok is an alien world on Earth. There's no sunlight. No seasons. No wind or sky. Just darkness, pressure, and the slow churn of time. Imagine the silence of such a place. Not even the faintest trickle. Just icy blackness and microbial whispers. And yet, scientists believe that life may still exist there. In fact, traces of microbial DNA have already been discovered in core samples. Not a bustling city, sure, but life. Breathing. Persisting. It's a place so extreme that NASA has studied it as an Earth-based analog for Europa, one of Jupiter's frozen moons. Think about that. This buried lake could help us understand life on another planet, and it's been hiding beneath our feet the entire time. Here's a grounded academic debate. Some scientists argue that the lake has remained sealed for millions of years, allowing life to evolve in total isolation. Others believe there are fissures and connections, tiny glacial tunnels, that allow nutrients or even occasional water exchange with other subglacial bodies. The truth is, no one really knows. Every drill into the lake is also a question mark, a gamble, a risk of contamination or loss. But there's more to this idea of buried time. Antarctica itself, this white, seemingly featureless continent, has moved. Not just in the political sense, but literally. Over hundreds of millions of years, it has wandered across the globe like a silent traveler. During the age of the dinosaurs, it wasn't even frozen, it was covered in forests, alive with flora and fauna. Fossils of warm-weather plants and even prehistoric amphibians have been discovered beneath the ice. You could say the continent has worn many coats in its lifetime. And in all those layers, forests, deserts, oceans, tundras, it has stored echoes of everything it once was. Now here's the odd fringe theory. Some researchers suggest that entire ancient impact sites, like the remnants of asteroids or long-forgotten civilizations, might lie trapped under miles of Antarctic ice. In 2017, a radar anomaly near Wilkes Land sparked wild speculation that a massive crater, 3 times the size of Paris, could be the scar of an ancient asteroid impact. Some even tied it to the Permian-Triassic extinction, the so-called Great Dying. Is it true? Maybe not. But the fact that we don't know is what makes it so compelling. It's as if Antarctica is playing an enormous, centuries-long game of hide-and-seek with humanity. And every time we learn something new, it offers up another layer, like a Russian doll made of snow and stone. As you lie there tonight, your breath soft and steady, picture it, beneath you, beneath everything, is a land that doesn't just hold snow. It holds memory. Forests that once swayed where glaciers now crawl. Lakes that breathe in silence. Air that hasn't moved in epochs. And the stars above you? They've been watching the whole time. You're part of that memory too now. Just another layer waiting to be discovered, one distant day in the future. But for now, don't worry about being unearthed. You're safe. Still. And very, very small under the weight of all that ice and time. Let's follow that thread even deeper now. Deeper than time, deeper than lakes, deeper than glaciers. Imagine you're not just lying under the ice, you are the ice. Pressed and ancient. Watching civilizations form and vanish, watching stars bloom and die above the planet's rotating crown. Because beneath the Antarctic ice lies something even stranger than water or fossils. Mountains. That's right, entire mountain ranges hidden in the dark. They're called the Gamburtsev Mountains, and they stretch across more than 1,200 kilometers, about the size of the Alps. But here's the twist, they're completely entombed under up to 4 kilometers of ice. We didn't even know they were there until the 1950s, when seismic studies accidentally picked up their echoes. Since then, every satellite scan and radar map has confirmed it. Massive peaks, deep valleys, all completely invisible. And we still don't fully understand how they got there. This is where it gets speculative. Some geologists suggest they're ancient roots of a mountain system long gone, maybe hundreds of millions of years old. Others believe they rose again later due to tectonic activity, like ghosts reassembling their old shape from memory. Either way, they shouldn't really exist beneath the ice in the form they do. It's as if Antarctica decided to keep a secret, and buried it under a white sheet 40 million years thick. And if that's not enough, we're still struggling to explore them. The weight of the ice makes direct study nearly impossible. Scientists use airborne radar, gravitational surveys, and magnetic resonance data to try and paint a picture. but it's like trying to draw a cathedral using only the sound of a bell ringing behind its walls. Here's a solid mainstream fact. The existence of these buried mountains helped explain why the Antarctic ice sheet exists at all. Without high terrain to anchor and guide it, the continent might not have frozen in the dramatic, domed way it did. In a strange way, the mountains are part of what made the ice. A mountain range you can't see, shaping a world you can't escape. And here's a weird tidbit for your dreams tonight. Deep under the East Antarctic ice sheet, there are anomalies in the Earth's gravity field, places where the gravitational pull is slightly different than expected. Scientists believe these gravity holes could hint at unusual density changes in the crust below, or even massive hidden structures. It's like the planet is whispering secrets through physics itself. Just imagine standing above all that, ice under your boots, mountains under the ice, and unknown forces below even them. A geological nesting doll, each layer colder and more mysterious than the last. But none of it's dead. That's the strangest part. Antarctica may seem like a silent continent, but it's alive in slow motion. The ice flows like honey. The ground creaks. Volcanoes sleep under frozen oceans. Magnetic fields flicker through its rock. The place moves, it changes, it breathes. And so does the Earth. You see, the idea that continents are still shifting isn't just a classroom fact, it's real, it's now. Antarctica itself is part of a slow dance across the surface of the world, drifting like a massive, frozen ship. It's so slow we barely notice it, but over time, it has transformed. One day, millions of years from now, it may not even be at the South Pole anymore. The glaciers may melt. The cities we once buried, or imagined, may rise again. Maybe some future explorer will find your bones under a warm breeze where the snow used to be. And they'll say, there was once a person here. They breathed air. They dreamed at night. They listened to stories about places like this. You, my sleepy traveler, are part of this tectonic lullaby. A chapter in a planet that's still writing its story. Now close your eyes, and imagine those hidden mountains breathing with you. Let's take one last long breath inside this frozen riddle. Imagine digging even deeper, beneath the ice, beneath the mountains, beneath the crust, until you reach the ancient bedrock. This is the base of everything, the floor of the Earth itself. Down here, time doesn't just slow down, it stretches. You're brushing against the leftovers of supercontinents, the dusty memories of Pangaea, Gondwana, Rodinia. The bedrock beneath Antarctica holds onto these eras like an old book pressed shut by weight and cold. Now here's the eerie truth. Antarctica might be hiding impact craters, evidence of ancient asteroid collisions, that have never been confirmed because of the ice. One particular anomaly in Wilkes Land has the right magnetic signature and structure to suggest something massive hit the Earth there, possibly triggering global extinctions or climate shifts. But it's still wrapped in layers of glacial silence. It's like the planet's biggest secrets are encased in ice, just waiting for someone to warm them up. And just above that, right before you hit the ancient crust, lies something called Lake Vostok. This is no ordinary lake. It's one of the largest subglacial lakes in the world, roughly the size of Lake Ontario, but sealed off from the surface for millions of years. That means any life inside it, bacterial, microbial, or stranger, has evolved in total isolation. We've drilled into it carefully, found odd microbes and strange chemistry, but the truth is, we still have no idea what's really swimming down there. Some scientists believe we're looking at a model for alien life, not on Earth, but beneath the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn. If life can thrive under the Antarctic ice, cut off from the sun, fed only by minerals and heat from the Earth's crust, then maybe Europa and Enceladus aren't so lonely after all. So here you are, lying still, eyes closed, brain slowing down. But just under the imaginary snow, there are lakes that breathe, mountains that wait, and craters that remember. A planet inside a planet. A world within the world. Let's stretch out even more. Because the ice, it's melting. That's not a metaphor. Antarctica is losing mass, fast. Glaciers are sliding into the sea. Ice shelves the size of cities are cracking off into the Southern Ocean. It's happening quietly, far from most human eyes, but it's happening. This isn't just a climate issue, it's a memory leak. The longer we wait, the more ancient stories will slide away into salt water and vanish. There's even a term for it, climate archaeology. It refers to the race to understand what's hidden in the ice before it melts. Scientists are scrambling to extract cores, data, gases, fossils, anything, before the past disappears into the future. And no one knows what the final chapter will be. Maybe one day, all of Antarctica will become a green continent again, as it once was. Dinosaurs might not return, but palm trees could. You'd need sunscreen to visit. And here's something wild to whisper to yourself before sleep. One of the best maps of Antarctica's under-ice topography was built using ice-penetrating radar by a converted Cold War spy plane. A relic of global surveillance, now repurposed to peer through glaciers. From war to wonder. That's our species in a sentence, isn't it? So now, as you float in the quiet hum of night, think of that whole continent beneath you. An entire realm of water, rock, and shadowed time. It's real. It's waiting. And it's still writing its next page, just like you are. The buried city may never be found. Or maybe we are the buried city, remembering, dreaming, dissolving. Sleep well, explorer. The ice won't tell your secrets. You trace your finger over the icy ruins that emerge like whispers from beneath the snow, their outlines barely visible under centuries of frost and silence. Each step you take crunches softly, like breaking glass layered in velvet. The sun above is dull and white, casting no warmth, only light, enough to reveal the contours of a city that time forgot but never erased. This was no ordinary settlement. Beneath your boots lie the remains of something engineered, stone blocks too regular, corridors too aligned to be natural formations. Scientists who first discovered these outlines beneath Greenland's ice were stunned. Using ground-penetrating radar, they found symmetrical structures, potential walls, foundations, even what could be streets. It was as if an entire city had been sealed in time, locked beneath a glacial tomb. Now imagine this, about 12,000 years ago, as Earth was transitioning out of the last ice age, sea levels rose and global temperatures surged. Entire landscapes changed. And here, in the north, the ice crept forward instead of retreating, covering anything in its path. The question is, what had been there before the cold arrived? Some historians argue that these formations are natural, patterns in the rock and ice interpreted through human bias. Others propose something more. Could an ancient culture have existed here long before recorded history? A people who built, lived, and disappeared without a trace, save for the stone ghosts beneath the ice? Fringe theorists point to myths from around the world, legends of sunken kingdoms, frozen cities, civilizations swallowed by time. The Inuit, whose ancestors have called the Arctic home for millennia, tell stories of vanished tribes and lands beneath the snow. While most scientists tread carefully around these ideas, the overlap between folklore and geography is intriguing. The silence of the place speaks louder than any words. When you close your eyes, you can almost hear echoes, footsteps in long-abandoned halls, laughter frozen in time, the creak of doors that haven't opened in 10,000 years. You wonder if the city remembers you. And in a way, it does. Every molecule of ice that forms the floor beneath you is older than the oldest book, older than the oldest name. The city might be dead, But the ice is alive, shifting slowly, remembering everything. Imagine a place where the past is not gone but merely paused. That's what this feels like. A pause so deep, so vast, that to walk through it is to step outside of time. You're not just exploring ruins, you're trespassing on memory. You're standing in a city that no longer has a name. The air is sharp with cold, yet perfectly still, as if even the wind has forgotten how to move. You're not entirely sure how you arrived here, only that the structures before you are impossibly old, the shapes carved with the symmetry of a forgotten language. Each frozen column and staircase looks as though it was placed with intention, by minds that once pulsed with purpose, now long silent. The ice beneath your boots is not just ice. It's memory. Layer after layer of compacted snow, crushed into crystal glass over thousands, maybe millions, of years. Scientists studying ancient ice cores in Antarctica have discovered something incredible. The deeper you drill, the further back in time you travel. Trapped within each layer are tiny bubbles of air, perfectly preserved, whispering secrets of a past atmosphere. In fact, the oldest ice ever sampled on Earth? Around 2.7 million years old. That's long before Homo sapiens even existed. The air inside those bubbles has never been breathed by anything remotely human. It's ghost air. And if that doesn't give you a chill, I don't know what will. Now imagine, what if beneath those layers, there's more than air? What if there's architecture, history, a forgotten civilization? That's exactly what some fringe researchers propose. Not just ancient bacteria or bits of pollen, but whole cities locked away by shifting ice sheets. Of course, mainstream science is more conservative. Most geologists agree there's no solid evidence of full-blown urban structures beneath Antarctica's ice. But there have been unusual satellite readings, symmetrical shapes that don't quite line up with natural formations. Even government expeditions that keep their data a little too close to the chest. Conspiracy theorists love this, of course. Aliens, lost Atlanteans, ancient machines, you name it. But here's a more grounded possibility. In a time when Antarctica wasn't covered in ice, maybe it was green. And warm. Fossilized tree roots and pollen grains have been discovered far beneath the continent, suggesting that lush forests once thrived where today only silence reigns. Some estimates place this warm period around 90 million years ago, during the Cretaceous era. Back when dinosaurs were stomping around, and flowering plants were just showing off. Imagine that for a second. A forested Antarctica, complete with rivers, insects, maybe even mammals watching the skies for pterosaurs. And then the climate shifts. Plate tectonics shove the continent toward the South Pole. Temperatures plummet. Rain becomes snow. Snow becomes glaciers. And everything is buried. Including, perhaps, early attempts at shelter. Stone tools. Or stories carved into wood, long since decayed, but maybe, just maybe, something more durable was left behind. Remember Lake Vostok? It's a subglacial lake buried under 4 kilometers of ice. It's been sealed off from the surface for at least 15 million years. When researchers finally sampled it, they found microbial life. Life. In total isolation. The conditions are so extreme that NASA is studying the lake to prepare for future missions to Europa or Enceladus, icy moons that may host alien oceans of their own. So what if beneath this frozen tomb, we're not just looking for ancient ice? What if we're looking at Earth's own training ground for space exploration? A preserved biosphere from a time when the planet was wildly different, yet equally alive? You crouch down in this imaginary ice-covered city, brushing frost from the edge of what looks like a staircase. It spirals downward into darkness, and for a second, you think you hear something, like a soft hum, too low to be mechanical, too consistent to be natural. Maybe it's your imagination. Maybe it's the echo of time, bouncing through the ice like sonar. Or maybe it's the past remembering you. As you descend, you realize how little we truly understand about the continents we think we've mapped. Most of Earth's terrain is still wildly unexplored, underwater, underground, or, in this case, under glaciers. Every year, satellite technology improves, revealing anomalies that prompt more questions than answers. Rectangular grids. Linear ridges. Shadowy patches that stubbornly refuse to be identified. Historians debate whether pre-Ice Age civilizations could have developed technologies more advanced than we currently credit them for. Not laser beams or anti-gravity, just the kind of solid engineering that wouldn't be out of place in a Neolithic culture with a few clever tricks. But if their cities were coastal or built near polar regions, those ruins may now be kilometers underwater or under ice. And so we continue to guess, and dream, and scan the deep blue-white of Antarctica from above. Searching not just for evidence, but for stories. Narratives frozen in place. Maybe not of humans, but of life. Struggle. Beauty. The profound silence that only follows after something has ended. You look back up at the surface. The wind has returned now, swirling fine crystals into the air. They catch the light like glitter, like stardust pretending to be snow. You know this city is only imagined, but the questions it represents are entirely real. What else have we buried? What else have we forgotten? And when the ice melts, if it ever does, what will it remember first? Imagine, for a moment, that you're holding a key. Not a metallic one with teeth and grooves, but something older. A symbolic key. One that unlocks a memory held in ice. You press it against the glacier wall, and for just a second, the ice becomes transparent, like glass. And through it, you see motion. A slow, swirling flow of time trapped in crystal. Because glaciers, as silent as they seem, are always moving. They slide. They grind. They erode mountains. They swallow forests. And sometimes, they carry secrets tucked deep in their frozen bellies. Scientists call it glacial transport. A stone or tree can be picked up by ice and carried for hundreds of miles, like a passenger that forgot to get off at the last stop. But what if something more fragile got caught up in that journey? A scroll, a carving, or a sliver of civilization now buried so deep it's indistinguishable from the ice itself? Now we're not just talking science, we're talking archaeology. Glacial archaeology is a real and relatively new field. As global temperatures rise and ice melts, ancient objects begin to emerge from the thawing permafrost. Tools. Clothing. Even human remains. Whole lives frozen mid-story, like a paused film waiting for someone to hit play. In Norway, for instance, melted ice patches have revealed Viking-era artifacts. In the Alps, the famously preserved body of Otzi the Iceman surfaced, complete with tools, weapons, and even a full stomach from his last meal. He died over 5,000 years ago. And thanks to the ice, we know his tattoos, his diet, his injuries, even his last moments. But Antarctica? Antarctica is different. Its ice is thicker, older, less forgiving. If something's hidden beneath it, it may never see sunlight again. Or, it might resurface just when we're finally ready to understand it. There's a theory, quiet, speculative, that advanced humans or humanoids may have lived during a previous warm period in Antarctica's history. Perhaps not the kind of advanced that flies spacecraft, but advanced enough to build, to organize, to leave behind markers of their presence. And if they did, the ice would have swallowed it all, preserving it like a time capsule we haven't learned how to open. It's a tempting thought. especially when you consider the myths. Cultures around the world speak of floods, sudden freezes, great resets. Atlantis, Hyperborea, the legends of the Hopi or the Mayans, all whisper about civilizations that rose and fell long before the official story begins. What if they weren't entirely mythical? What if they were simply buried too well? And then there's the mystery of magnetic poles. Earth's magnetic field has flipped multiple times in geological history. These flips can take thousands of years and affect everything from navigation to radiation exposure. Some researchers wonder if such shifts could trigger global climate changes, sudden ones. The kind that could turn a temperate paradise into an icebound tomb in just a few generations. You stand now on the rim of a great crevasse. A jagged split in the ice, so deep it disappears into black. Wind rushes through it like breath escaping from the lungs of the earth. And in that wind, if you close your eyes, you almost hear voices. Not words, nothing so clear. Just the shape of voices. Echoes. Laughter, perhaps. Or warning. You wonder what we would do if something truly unexpected emerged from that ice. An artifact. A ruin. A body that wasn't quite human. Would we be ready? Would we know what it meant? Or would we bury it again, this time under bureaucracy and fear? Let's return to what we do know. Radar mapping beneath Antarctica's ice has revealed strange, circular structures. Most are explained as subglacial lakes, or unusual rock formations. But not all. Some don't behave the way geology says they should. Some seem too symmetrical. Too intentional. Still, no conclusive evidence. Just questions. Patterns. Possibilities. But that's where the magic lives, isn't it? In the not knowing. In the maybe. Maybe this frozen city is a metaphor, or maybe it's just waiting. Waiting for the right conditions. The right warmth. The right eyes to notice it. The idea that something so enormous, so quiet, could be hiding something so extraordinary, it's humbling. And a little terrifying. Because if the ice can hide a city, what else has it hidden? What other truths lie beneath the surface, out of reach, out of time? You glance at the glacier one last time before walking away. Behind you, the wind starts to cover your footprints. In a few hours, there will be no sign you were ever there. And that, too, feels like part of the story. Because some things are meant to be found. And some things are meant to wait. There's something peculiar about cold places. Not just the physical chill, but the way they remember. Warmth evaporates, seasons change, but the cold, it preserves. It holds on to things. Like the planet's subconscious, tucking away memories for later. And nowhere embodies that better than the Antarctic. Tonight, let's follow something small. Not a ruin, not a city, but a single flake. A snowflake, falling silently from a sky without stars. It twirls through the icy air, weightless, pure, and then lands softly, joining 1,000 others. Harmless. Gentle. But over years, centuries, millennia, that flake becomes part of a glacier. Compressed. Buried. Forgotten. Until a core sample brings it back to light. Ice cores, long cylinders drilled deep into glaciers, are our time machines. Scientists pull them out, meter by meter, and each layer tells a story. Of volcanoes and seasons. Of ancient pollen drifting in prehistoric winds. Of trapped air bubbles, actual whispers of past atmospheres, frozen in time. Some cores go back 800,000 years. Imagine that. Breathing in the same carbon dioxide that mammoths once exhaled. measuring oxygen ratios to reconstruct long-lost summers. Even finding traces of cosmic events, like distant supernovae or meteor impacts, etched faintly into frozen layers. And yet, all of it begins with something so simple. A snowflake. A sigh of water vapor that decided to fall. This leads us to something even more poetic. Antarctica, in many ways, is not just ice. It's time. Not metaphorical time, but literal, datable, scientific time. It moves slowly, with the patience of geology and the memory of physics. And buried within its layers may be more than environmental records. Some researchers believe we might one day find microorganisms frozen alive, viable, ancient life that hasn't breathed for tens of thousands of years. In fact, in Siberian permafrost, bacteria have been revived after 30,000 years in suspended animation. What stories could Antarctic microbes tell? What secrets might they hold about evolution, resilience, or even the early conditions of Earth? But there's more. Antarctica isn't only cold above the surface. Deep beneath the miles of ice lie entire subglacial lakes. Lake Vostok is the most famous, sealed under 4 kilometers of ice, untouched by sunlight for maybe 15 million years. Let that number sit with you. 15 million years of isolation. That's older than apes. Older than grass. Older than the Himalayas. And inside it? Possibly ecosystems that have evolved in complete darkness, under pressure, without photosynthesis. It would be the closest thing we have to exploring an alien ocean, like the ones under Europa or Enceladus, without leaving Earth. Scientists have already drilled to collect samples, but the environment is so delicate, so easy to contaminate, that even getting near the lake feels like poking a dream. A dream the Earth has been having for eons, uninterrupted, until now. And then there's the heat. Yes, heat. Beneath all that ice, Antarctica hides geothermal activity. There are volcanic mountains under the ice sheet. Mount Erebus is still active today. Some theories even suggest that volcanic heat from below might help melt portions of the ice from the bottom up, creating hidden rivers and lakes that flow through pitch-black corridors, sculpting caverns in secret. This makes Antarctica even more mysterious. It's not a static, frozen wasteland. It's alive. It breathes. It moves. And it changes. And change is where the future starts to whisper. With climate shifts accelerating, ice is melting faster than expected. Satellites track massive ice shelves cracking, drifting, collapsing into the sea. Sea levels rise. Ecosystems shift. And the white silence of Antarctica becomes a roaring signal, an alarm buried in beauty. But here's the paradox. As the ice disappears, we're also discovering more than ever before. Radar penetrates deeper. Drones map crevasses. Hidden mountains emerge from beneath ancient blankets of snow. And we ask, what else have we missed? What else is waiting? Maybe it's just geology. Maybe it's lost lakes, or fossilized forests. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something we're not quite ready for. Something that reminds us how little we know. How temporary we are. Because the ice doesn't care who's in charge. It doesn't care about politics or borders. It melts when it wants to. It reveals when it's ready. And until then, it waits. Patient, stoic, timeless. As you watch the snowy horizon blur with the gray sky, you feel something odd. Gratitude. Gratitude that something as vast and cold as Antarctica could hold so much memory. That a continent made of silence could speak so powerfully, not with words, but with presence. You wrap your scarf a little tighter, listen to the creak of distant ice shifting, and think, maybe the frozen parts of the world are not dead. Maybe they're just dreaming. And maybe, just maybe, the dreams are starting to thaw. Let's take one last walk across the ice. Not through snowstorms or cracking glaciers, but beneath the surface, through the oldest places of all. Because here, at the very bottom of the Antarctic ice sheet, lies something rarely spoken of in textbooks or even science documentaries. A shadow of a world that might have once been warm. Beneath all that frozen mass, scientists have found clues, soft layers of sediment, ancient pollen, fossilized wood. Not just traces of life, but of green life. Forests, rivers. Possibly entire valleys that once teemed with vegetation and light. It's hard to believe. But millions of years ago, Antarctica wasn't the barren frostscape we know now. It was part of Gondwana, a lush supercontinent that included what would later become Africa, South America, India, and Australia. It spun slowly under golden skies, home to mosses, ferns, even dinosaurs. Then the continents shifted. The Earth's tilt wobbled. Ocean currents changed. Antarctica began drifting south, into isolation. Temperature by temperature, century by century, it froze. And with each passing eon, it buried its memory a little deeper. But the Earth has a way of archiving everything. Satellite scans and radar imagery now reveal ancient riverbeds under the ice, flowing in ghostly patterns. There are signs of volcanic activity that could one day reawaken. Some scientists even wonder whether parts of Antarctica could become green again, if climate change continues at its current pace. Imagine that. A forest reborn, not by miracle, but by warning. And in that forest, somewhere deep in a cave or buried under a hill, we might find something that rewrites everything. Maybe it's a fossil that fills a missing link. Maybe it's an unknown species. Maybe it's nothing but the shape of a tree root, curved gently into the sediment like a memory left behind. Whatever it is, Antarctica is telling us something. That time doesn't just move forward, it stacks. It layers. It encodes. The deeper we look, the further back we go. And the further back we go, the more we see ourselves reflected in unfamiliar places. Because beneath the layers of this planet, you'll find echoes of us. Our fears. Our triumphs. Our quiet awe. This cold continent is a mirror, held up not just to science, but to imagination. And it asks us the gentlest of questions. What will we leave behind? Will it be a whisper of care, a trace of wonder? Or just carbon footprints melted into the ice? This is the tension Antarctica holds. Not hostility, but indifference. Not cruelty, but distance. And that distance gives us perspective. Out here, far from cities and noise, far from deadlines and algorithms, we remember how small we really are. And somehow, that doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like a kind of peace. A peace we almost forgot we needed. And so, as you gaze into that endless white, lit softly by moonlight that reflects off a glacier face, you let your thoughts slow. You imagine the Earth not as a machine, but as a living memory. Breathing. Watching. Becoming. Somewhere far beneath your feet, a leaf fossil sleeps. Somewhere above your head, the stars continue their patient rhythm. And you, in the middle of it all, exist for just a flicker of time. But what a beautiful flicker it is. Let it glow gently in the cold. And now, dear explorer, we've reached the end of the ice. You've wandered through ancient snowfields, stood at the edge of buried forests, and watched lost rivers carve invisible trails under a mile of silence. You've listened to the cold whisper secrets older than any city, and felt the quiet weight of time pressing gently down on forgotten lands. There's a softness here, isn't there? A kind of stillness you can't find in noise. In Antarctica, the clocks move slower. Even the wind feels like it's remembering something. And as you lie back now, perhaps already wrapped in blankets of your own, you can carry that stillness with you. Let your thoughts drift like snowflakes over the landscape of your mind. No urgency. No direction. Just slow, swirling presence. Your breath, gentle and rhythmic, like wind brushing over a glacier. Your body, sinking into sleep, like a fossil settling into ancient ground. And your thoughts, fading, one by one, like footprints in freshly fallen snow. This has been a journey not just across continents, but within. So thank you for walking through the frozen quiet with me tonight. May your dreams carry you somewhere soft. Somewhere white, and endless, and calm. Good night, explorer. Sleep well.